All right, we're live. Welcome back, everyone. I'll wait a few minutes and let people chime in. If you do come in and let me know if you're able to hear me, I'm going to put a comment in there quick. Let me know. I kind of decided to live stream last minute. I had actually recorded um, more or less the substance of this afternoon, but I had the mic on. I didn't have the mic set right, and so the audio was terrible. So I decided to do it again. I thought, what the heck? I'll go ahead and live stream, give you guys a little bit of warning. Um, I'll give people a few minutes to scroll in if they want to before I get into it. It's been a little while since I recorded on this channel. I have been very, very busy with work in home and really since the holidays, honestly. But getting ready for this trip was quite an adventure, especially for my wife. Trying to find a suitable place for all of the kids for what amounted to, I guess, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 5+ days. Was not easy, but we did. Everything worked good, worked well. We came home to the same number of kids we left with. Um, so yeah, so let me go ahead and kind of get started here. Um, so my wife and I, of my wife of 20, is it 22 years? I always have to stop and think about it. We were married in 2002. Yeah, 22 and a half years. Um, we had our first child about 10, 11, 10 and a half months after we got married. And, you know, we were pregnant within about a month and a half after we got married. And this was our first time anywhere since then where we didn't have kids or my wife wasn't pregnant. And that's not a joke. First time we've gone overnight, I think, at all since our honeymoon, basically, without some child with us, and very very long overdue. I don't recommend that people do what we did and wait so long, but it's really hard. It is really really hard to get away when you have a family. Could be a variety of things. When you're nursing, it's not easy to leave the baby with someone else, and you may not want to do that. Um, Money can be an issue. Finding sitters, not everyone is equipped to handle any kind of a larger family, um, grandparents included. My parents are getting up there in age and just are not really physically able to handle the youngest kids. So what we ended up doing is we have a normal sitter that watches our youngest 2-year-old, the only one who's not in school at least some of the time. We had the sitters lined up to handle her the 2 days. So we left on a Wednesday evening, drove a few hours to the airport, and spent the night. And so the kids were in school Thursday and Friday, and we had a sitter watch the 2-year-old during the school day while the other kids were at school, and then the kids were off Monday. So we flew out Thursday morning early. So we went to the airport Wednesday night, got up there a little later than we had wanted to. And then with some, because it's one of these, I've never used it before, but it's a really handy deal. It's called, what's it called? Stay and park. So you can go to a hotel and then you can leave your vehicle there while you're gone. So we spent the night and then we left the vehicle there for 5 days. And you could avoid the really high rental parking cost at the airport. And then they'll shuttle you back and forth. But because my vehicle had to be off site, I had to wait for the shuttle to get back. And so it was just 10:30 at night before got back to the hotel, all done. And then we had an early flight the next morning. Um, and then we went to Arizona, which was much, much nicer than the Midwest. Phoenix was in the 60s during the day. Get down to about 30s or 40 at night. We went up to the Grand Canyon for basically a day and a half, and it was a little colder up there, but still much nicer than it was in the Midwest. And then we came back last night to 15 degrees below zero, and windy, and just I really did not want to get off that plane. You could tell it, you could just feel it as soon as we landed, and especially when you went onto the jet bridge. It got super cold. Um, but it worked out. It worked out actually surprisingly well. I had to go out to Arizona for a couple days for a work conference. Brought my wife along, and then we brought our oldest son, who's 21, in the military. He had a long weekend. We flew him in as well, and he spent the last few days for us with us. And then we all flew out yesterday evening, Monday evening. And then probably the worst part is getting to the airport at about 10:30 at night, and then getting back to the hotel, getting the car. Fortunately, it started, and then it was about a 3-hour drive, so we didn't get home until 3:30 in the morning. That was a long That was a long drive. I told my wife she didn't have to stay up with me, which she didn't. So she at least got some sleep on the way home. Um, but a couple things I wanted to talk about today. One is more general, and the other is kind of the specifics of kind of how things. Um, did we have a good time while we were in Arizona? I'll tell you all about that here in a moment. Um, but one of the things that I've noticed in the last few months, since we basically weaned the youngest child, my wife, I should say, weaned the youngest child in anticipation of this trip. And, it's the first time, I believe, since we first got pregnant that my wife hasn't been pregnant, nursing, or both. And boy, can she tell a difference, and boy, can I tell a difference in her. It's amazing how much motherhood um, takes out of you and how deeply it affects you. And I- it honestly feels like I live with a different woman now. And it's probably for a variety of reasons. We've been working on some other things in our relationship as well. I'm really happy to say that our marriage has never been better than it is now. But I do think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we are not. Well, I think we're kind of done having kids now. At least that's the hope and the plan. And my wife has just commented on how much she actually feels like a normal person again, not constantly feeding a baby, not being pregnant, all that kind of stuff, dealing with newborns. She feels like she's in a strange body in a wonderful way that we've just never really experienced, except for the first few weeks of our marriage. And it's been a lot of fun. She's much happier, um, within life, with me, we definitely have fewer, I would say, fights or whatever. One thing I've noticed is when my wife is upset about something, typically the kids, she doesn't really take it out on me, um, which I think in the past has kind of been how she's dealt with the stress, in part because she probably, rightfully so, blames me for the situation she's in. But it feels very different now in a very, very wonderful way. And so we've just had a lot of fun together. Um, she laughs at my jokes that for a long time I could never get her to laugh. Uh, and I just think that the weight of motherhood has really weighed her down. And you don't really realize it at the time because you're just in constant survival mode. And that's where we've been for the entirety of our marriage. And we were talking off and on while we were on vacation. I was at my conference that we wouldn't go back to the younger days at all. Um, like we are very content right now. We're very happy. Um, and uh, I just wouldn't go back to being young and inexperienced and just overwhelmed by young babies and all that kind of stuff. And so it was a really great time for us to get away and just be together, be by ourselves, hang out with other adults, not worrying about um, the kids and things like that. Not that my wife didn't worry about the kids, but they were in good hands while we were gone, and we could really just be ourselves and spend time with each other. So we had a great time together. I wish it could have lasted longer, but um, we were we were stretching our limits with the sitters, the friends, and the teenagers. We were kind of holding down the fort while we were gone. It's difficult to be away from the house, especially when you live in the country when it's 10, 15, 20 below zero. Things start freezing up and breaking at that point in time, and so it was good to get back. But so how did things work out for us while we were in Arizona? Well, I'm happy to say they worked out well, and in fact, probably couldn't have worked out much better than they did from a natural family planning standpoint. Um, that's the hard thing about traveling. This was kind of a once in a lifetime thing for us. And, we've been planning this for probably 3 months now. And you really don't know until you get within a month or so. And even then, it's in this case, I knew it was going to be close. I knew we were going to be um, right on the beginning of a new cycle. And for those that don't deal with natural family planning or any of that, let me kind of give you a breakdown of how it works. So cycles are based on they begin with menstruation. So when a woman has her period, that's the beginning of a cycle. And then what you're doing with natural family planning is you are um, charting. You're observing and charting the biological signs and symptoms. Could be things from mucus to temperature, uh, calendar days, or what we use is fertility test strips. And then so for most people, for most women, ovulation occurs around day 14, give or take. For some women, it's a little earlier. For some women, it's a little later. But if an average cycle is around 28 days, the part of it that doesn't really change, I think, is the time after ovulation. Not the time before ovulation can vary, but once ovulation occurs, I think it is very, almost mathematical. like 14 to 15 days after ovulation will be the end of that cycle and the beginning of a new cycle. And so for most women, that means ovulation is occurring around, 12 to 14, day 12 to day 14. Um, and what makes NFP sort of difficult is you don't really know exactly when ovulation is going to happen until it happens. Like if you're kind of consistent, you kind of know, but it's much easier to it's much easier to know what to do after ovulation occurs than before. And the reason why it's difficult before is cervical mucus keeps sperm alive for like 4 or 5 days. If that wasn't the case, NFP would be much easier, and your fertile window would be much shorter, and the abstinence period much shorter. But because you got to account for the fact that you have to stay away from each other at least 4 to 5 days minimum before ovulation, plus you don't know exactly when ovulation is going to happen, you know, that means there's going to be a period of time before ovulation that you have to abstain if you're trying not to get pregnant. And then under most methods, there's a up to minimum of a day or two to up to like 5 days under the Marquette after the fact that you abstain just in case you misobserved something, or the fertility monitor got it wrong or something like that. And so for us, it has always been, at least since we started doing Marquette, is we have, you have about 5 days at the beginning of the cycle that are kind of considered uh, good to go. You don't even test during the first 5 days under the Marquette method. And then after 5 days, if you're rigidly following the rules, you're abstaining beginning on day 6 until ovulation, followed by like four or 5 more days, depending on how you do the math, which, under that can very easily, and for us has amounted to like 2+ weeks of abstinence, which is almost literally more than half the cycle. And so but for us, under the Marquette, if you've been charting long enough, 6 months, you can add a couple days to the beginning of the cycle. So like days 6 and 7, and still have a buffer zone in there of like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 days. I'm not sure exactly what it is before ovulation normally occurs. And so that's what we did. We've been able to typically utilize around day 4 to day 7, because for the first few days, it's not really fun for anyone, or at least not fun for her during the early days of menstruation. It's kind of a mess and not real fun. So realistically, you have day 4 through 7 for us, at least. 4 and 5 being the safest, and 6 and 7 being pretty safe, but you're getting into the territory where if you have a really early peak, you can get into trouble. So for us, as we got closer to the vacation, it was the question was going to be, when was the last cycle going to end, and when was the new cycle going to start? And this cycle started. It looked like I was going to be in really good shape, in terms of the first night away was going to probably be day 4, which is usually the first day we try. And then you'd have day 4, 5, and 6, where we would be by ourselves in a hotel. Then starting that Saturday, our son was going to join us, and we were going to be sharing a room. So the cycle started a day earlier than expected. So by the time we got to the day we left, the night we left, it was day 5. And it was great. I got to the hotel. By the time we got all settled in, it was about 10:30 at night, and we had to get up early for a flight the next day. But it was just strange to have that time just to ourselves. Like, if you're not in this situation, you can't relate to that, but let me try and describe it as best I can. When you have kids, especially small kids, and a lot of them like we do, the for us at least, the biggest challenge to making intimacy happen is all the kids either being asleep or being distracted for the amount of time that you need to do that, and you tend to be very efficient with your time, and always, you know, it's been plenty of times over the course of our marriage where you're sort of in the middle of things and then someone wakes up and the game gets called on account of rain, and that's the worst. And so you just tend to be, you don't waste time, right? You kind of get to things. um there isn't a lot of time to really romance and foreplay and all that because you're constantly waiting for something to go off. And so that was the strangest thing, is having that day and knowing that barring some real unforeseen circumstances, it was going to happen. And so the biggest thing that was different for me at least is I really wasn't stressed about it that day. Whereas normally with NFP, even on the first, let's say, day after abstinence, the first infertile day, um, you know, it it's stressful because it may not happen or it may not happen until midnight, depending on when the kids all get settled down. And so I don't know, I find it to be a stressful thing. It's been a while and you want to make it, um, you want to make it happen. And so, um, that was the strangest thing, was to be like, okay, it's going to happen. We know it's going to happen, and we could just really enjoy ourselves. And so having the lack of stress was such a strange feeling. And just to have more time to like cuddle and just do things. I think we even took a shower, which we haven't done in years. Um, so happens way more often if you're doing NFP, in my experience. And then you said the interruptions. Yeah, I guess because doing NFP makes you have a bunch of kids. The kids are the interruptions. Um, I don't know. I know uh, some people are able to just put a movie on for the kids and slip away. We've never been able to make that happen. It's not. I mean, we just never been able to make that happen. Um, and part of it gets my wife's not just can't get in the frame of mind to do that when some of the kids are awake. And I'll be honest with you, our kids are very inquisitive. They won't just sit and watch TV for however long that takes. So the interruptions are just part of it when you have kids, and that's the hardest thing about uh, NFP, I think, is you know you already have significant chunks of the month unavailable to you, and then sometimes life just doesn't line up with the NFP calendar, and you kind of got to force it and make it happen, even when you're both like dead tired or you got something coming up the next day. I think that's the worst part of NFP, or just Catholic life in general, where you don't have the ability to use contraception or anything like that. So the first night was great. Even though it was late, even though we had to get up early next morning, we had the time to ourselves, and it just it was just very nice. So that was Wednesday evening. Thursday morning we got up early. I think the shuttle picked us up at like 4:30 in the morning, took us to the airport. We flew to Arizona and had a full day there. And I was so tired that night that it wasn't even on my mind. I mean, I wouldn't say it wasn't on my mind at all, but I was just like, I just got to go to sleep. So nothing happened. The second day, which was day 6, and so Friday was our last day alone, and that was day 7, which is really the outer limit under Marquette before you really are starting to play with fire. And and again, it was strange. We could go to bed when we wanted. We could wake up when we wanted. My conference didn't start until like, I don't know, like breakfast was at 8, and since we were on still back on Midwest time, it was, I don't know, we were both up by like 6 in the morning, and I was like, "Hey, you want to?" And we did, and it was great. The first time we've actually we I think we had some morning fun about a couple months ago, but really before that we haven't tried a morning thing in a long time. My wife's not really a morning person. Getting up early to do that isn't something that's really important to her. But again, it was nice because we weren't rushed and we could just enjoy ourselves and take our time. And um, the biggest thing, I wouldn't say that, the experiences were any more intense or pleasurable or anything like that than normal, but it was just much more stress free than is usual in our household, at least. So, yeah, it was great. Um, Hopefully, we're not pregnant, Jonah 2.0. Um, that would be that would be um, a surprise and a disappointment for sure, because we are kind of ready to be done with this phase of our lives. Um, but it was very nice to just to get away. I wish we could do it more often. Maybe we will. Maybe we'll try it, even if it's just for a day away or night away. Um, so Pickin asked, um, yeah. So we flew in. Should I tell you where? Yeah. So we flew into Minneapolis, and we got in late, and then our plane was out on the I don't know if the tarmac's the right word. We had landed, and then we kind of just were stalled out there, and there was fire trucks and rescue personnel everywhere. I never did find out what it was. I was watching the news, but I mean, from what I could tell, it sure looked like a plane had crashed or something like that. Um, but there was a lot of rescue personnel, a lot of lights. Um, of course, it was colder than hell. It was like 15 below, excuse me, 15 below zero. Um, but I never did hear about it. I was checking Twitter to see if anything showed up, but so I don't know. Must not have been anything too serious. It didn't seem to make the news, but that didn't help because so we were kind of stuck out there for a while before we got to our. It was already going to be kind of a late flight. I think we got back at like 10:30, 10:40 p.m. And then we were probably out there for an extra 20 minutes, and then waiting for the shuttle. We didn't get back to the we didn't get back to the hotel until like 11:30, and I wasn't sure if our vehicle would start, but I got the car to start, and then we had to drive basically 3 hours. So I got home at like 3:30 in the morning. So yeah, I'm pretty exhausted today. So, stop what? Um, how are you doing, by the way, Mister? We won't do it during pregnancy. Um, yeah, I'm. I can't say that we don't sometimes think about, what it would be like to have another one. But boy, it really takes it out of you. And man, I'm getting old. My wife's, getting up there, and man, I don't want to be well into my 60s if we can help it. Before our youngest graduates from high school, as it is, I think I'll be 60 as is. If I think about it. So, um, we've done our part. We got 9 kids. Obviously, you're always open to more if that's what happens, but we're sure trying not to. Um, but it's really hard to be parents and um, keep your marriage and your intimate life in good shape. It is really tough. I think most people suffer a lot more than they let on, and um, you know it's it can it really tests you. And for most of us, um, I think it's just natural for us to kind of put our own relationships on hold, our marriages on hold, kind of let ourselves go from a health standpoint, mental health standpoint. I just think the demands of parenting, especially if you have more than, let's say a couple of kids, it just demands so much of you, constant, nonstop, for 18 plus years. Doesn't even stop after that. My wife still worries about our oldest and 2 kids that are, out of the house now. And, when you multiply that by as many kids as we do, it's a huge load. It's a huge weight for especially the wives. I can't, you know, I don't know if it's because I'm a guy or just the way I, approach life, but I'm just not as weighed down by those things. There's a lot of other things that weigh me down but my wife just carries a very heavy mental load when it comes to this stuff. And you know, I, I totally understand why she just is not really anxious to go through all that again. I watched her be pregnant and give birth 9 times, and man, I don't know how she does it. I don't know how she's done it. Um, I have absolute respect for what my wife has gone through, what women go through when it comes to pregnancy and delivery and caring for newborns and nursing and all that kind of stuff. And it's no surprise that making time for um, intimacy is the last thing on their minds. And, it really creates kind of constant tension for those of us that are married, especially those of us who are Catholics trying to kind of follow all these different rules, some of which are more difficult than others. So, yeah, it was a great time. Um, I hope we could do it again, but it's hard. It's a hard thing to pull off, um, regardless of the number of kids you have. But yeah, so back at it. Now I'm back on the lam here again for probably another week or 10 days. Um, so, but I guess I can say honestly that if there's one benefit to getting older, I would say that the abstinence periods aren't as difficult as they used to be. I don't think the drive is quite as intense as it was when I was younger. Um, so, um, yeah, I guess there is some benefit to aging a little bit. So anyway, just want to throw that out there. Want to check in with you guys. If you have a chance, Jonah and I are chatting with Father Carr in the morning. Um, if you want, it's going to be 6 a.m. Central Time, 7 a.m. Eastern Time. Hopefully, we'll be talking about hell, and we're going to try and live stream that recording. So if you have a chance, if you want to chime in the morning, feel free to jump in on that. Um, Yeah, I assume you're talking about the abstinence challenge. Here's a funny story I'll share with you guys. So there's another podcast that I listen to. It's not a Catholic podcast. I think it's called what's it called? Let me look it up quick. It's actually really I like it. Kingdom Sexuality, I think is the name of it. It's like three or four non-Catholic but Christian, um, younger than me for sure, couples talking about really all this kind of stuff that we talk about, but without all the moral baggage that we deal with. For better or for worse, they just don't really they just don't worry about things the way that we do, but they still have the same natural challenges when it comes to intimacy. And the one guy was talking about his own. They went on a sex fast. The first time was I had to laugh. So the first time was because his wife threw her back out, and then the second time was self-imposed because he had relapsed into porn after like 2.5 years without. And so and so when he talked about a sex fast, it was like, you know, a week, a week or a week and a half was the sex fast, and I kind of had to chuckle about that because we do that all the time with NFP. The one after the porn was a little longer. I think I'm trying to remember how long he was planning to do it. They did not make it the whole time either. I'm not sure, but I believe he did it without any solo or anything like that as well. Um, but it was funny to hear them talk about a sex fast that is kind of just a regular occurrence for those of us using NFP. Um, but at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff is you know common to all of us. We just have all that plus all this Catholic guilt, Catholic rule stuff. Um, yeah, I know you like to say that, but um, they're. I don't know. The, I will say this: the Protestants. This is one of the reasons why I don't think contraception is necessarily the answer, because most of these folks are okay using it, but still have a lot of the same kinds of relational and intimacy struggles that the rest of us have. But they're dealing with it primarily in, I don't know, human terms, and they're not doing it because they're constantly afraid they're going to hell and stuff like that, which I think is super. There's something appealing about that. But it doesn't take away all of the challenges that we have, and I think I think there is. eh, I do tend to think yet that NFP is in many ways a better option to contraception if the couple has some leniency on what they can do individually or by them, as a couple during the abstinence periods when they have to avoid the conjugal act. I think that presents a much better, more realistic option for most people than even the those that are okay with contraception and all that. Um, Redmond recently came out as having been celibate and weed free for 2 years. Yeah, who is Redmond? I don't know who that is. Celibate and weed free. Celibate. Well, I wonder what that means. Uh, which Redmond is that? Looking it up here. I'm just okay. So there's some guy. Redmond. Who is that? Is he married? Must be a big YouTube personality, it looks like. Well, I've been weed free my entire life. Incidentally, when we were in okay, when we were in Arizona, we were driving down in Phoenix, and we went through a club district, and you could really smell it. Um, Red man, red man. Oh, I wonder what was harder to give up, the sex or the weed. Yeah, I'm with Catholic Troll. I've never tried it myself. I'm not necessarily opposed to it for the most part. I think it's kind of a dumb thing to do more than I don't necessarily think it's all that immoral or anything like that. I don't think it should be illegal or criminalized, but not my thing. I don't know, it stinks. Uh, it just stinks, and it wouldn't be something I would want to spend money on. So I wish it was as easy to go without intimacy as it is to go without weed. That would be nice. But so Catholic Troll. So how far along is the pregnancy? When is the little one? When is the little one due? It seems like you've been pregnant for a few months now. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. Um, I think it's especially for people that have like terminal conditions. What do they call it? The right to try. I think the movement that like let people use cannabis or weed or whatever if they want to. Um, Good for you. Hey, Lent would be a good time for you to try the celibate challenge for the remainder of the pregnancy. Make good old John Farrell proud. Um, Care to take the challenge? You can do it. I'm sure your wife would be happy. I don't know. I mean, for us at least, you should do it. So are you? You must be in the second trimester now. I would think. Maybe you're the end of the first trimester. I don't know. For us, the second trimester was always. My wife always felt really good, and I think got quite a bit of desire during the second trimester. So I always looked forward to the second trimester. First trimester, my wife is always kind of nauseous, especially early on. Not so much with the later pregnancies. And then the third trimester, um, we were always able to really keep doing it right up until the end, but it becomes uncomfortable for her towards the end. Not sure about you guys, but I don't know. I don't know. I always liked I always liked being Catholic and pregnant because you didn't have to deal with NFP anymore, and I think probably my wife enjoyed it just because you didn't. I mean, you weren't worried about getting pregnant because you were pregnant. Um, but so kind of missed that a little bit, but It's more sinful pound for pound of baby weight. Yeah. I don't know. I think God I think God wants us to take advantage of that time. Um, I know a lot of I know a lot of couples, they just stop doing anything at all during pregnancy, and boy, that would be a real buzz saw, I think. Fortunately for me, my wife has always been um, open and available pretty much throughout pregnancy. Postpartum always sucks, but you got to go through that. I'll be curious, Catholic Troll, if you do that, um, if you can get through that, and if you're able to get through the postpartum period without any solo slip ups. I never could get through that myself, but maybe that's because I'm a weak guy or just have a real strong desire. But that was always the hardest part for me. So, April, yeah, I have an April baby. It was a tough one for my wife. I think she had preeclampsia, and I think she had to deliver early, and the baby spent some time in the NICU, which was tough because we already had, we had like 5 or 6 kids at that point. So she was sleeping in the hospital. I was trying to manage the rest of the kids. Well, come on, you got to do it. That's the only way you'll. That was the only way I got through it, is putting myself out there and being accountable. Um, but do let me know if you do it. I'd be curious to know how it goes for you. Um, I wouldn't discourage anyone from doing it, but I think I don't know that the juice is worth the squeeze from my perspective by doing that. So, okay. Well, speaking of spouses and stuff, I'm gonna wrap this up and go home and have dinner with my wife and kids and get ready for another day of domestic life tomorrow. So, appreciate you guys for hopping in. If you have any questions about any of that, just leave a comment or send me a message. I'll try and answer it as best that I can. So, thanks for watching, everyone. And until next time, everyone, have a good one.